So first, where is Victoria? Well, Victoria is located on Vancouver Island in British Columbia on the Pacific coast, as Roy was saying. So I have a little map here. Victoria is at the southern tip of Vancouver Island, as you can see. Vancouver Island is not the same place as Vancouver. It's an island. It's called Vancouver Island. Vancouver, the city of Vancouver, is on the mainland. They are not the same place. You have to actually take a ferry or a plane to get to Vancouver Island. There is no bridge. It's not like PI. There's no bridge. So I have a picture of one of the ferries here. BC Ferries is the provincial ferry corporation. They're pretty big. It's not some little ferry with 5 cars. They hold about 360 cars and about over 2,000 passengers. So it's about an hour-and-a-half ferry ride. So it's a nice chance to see the scenery, maybe a whale or two. So it's a really enjoyable part of getting there. Okay, so some fast facts about Victoria. It's the capital city of British Columbia. As you can see here, we have the provincial parliament buildings at the harbor there. I'll talk more about that later, which is where the provincial government meets. As you may have guessed, the city is named after Queen Victoria and is famous around the world for its British heritage. I'll talk a bit about that. Population of Greater Victoria, so the city of Victoria plus surrounding towns, suburbs, is about 370,000 people, so not huge. About the same size as Kitchener, Waterloo. It's quite well known for its mild climate, definitely not like Calgary or even PEI. In the wintertime, snow is pretty rare. It's usually between 5 and 10 degrees Celsius. During a bad winter, the one bad winter we had, there was 2 weeks of snow. So that was a bad winter. Some winters there's no snow. So it's very mild, and that's because it's right by the Pacific Ocean. And that has a moderating influence, and it keeps things nice. In the summertime, it gets warm, but not too warm. It's about 20 degrees on average, maybe slightly more. You might get one day that's 30, but most people don't have air conditioning. It doesn't get too hot. And it's called the City of Gardens because of the nice mild climate and the great soil. It's well known for its gardens. As you may have guessed, Victoria's economy is driven by tourism. That's a big one. Lots of people like to visit, as well as tech companies, government, the military, the local universities are all drivers of the economy. Before European colonization, the land that's now British Columbia, as well as Washington State in the United States, was inhabited by the Coast Salish peoples. They have been living there for thousands of years. This picture here is a recreation of a Coast Salish longhouse. It's at the Royal British Columbia Museum in Victoria. As you can see there, it's made out of beautiful Western red cedar. So beautiful wood, beautiful artwork with the totem poles and other artifacts there. And the Coast Salish are very well known for their artistry. Their traditional way of life for the Coast Salish peoples consisted of fishing, hunting, and trading with other indigenous peoples both on the island and the mainland. And they're also, like I said, famous around the world for their artistry. So we have this longhouse here in the top left corner, which is right beside the Royal British Columbia Museum and totem pole, as well as some traditional canoes. You see bottom right, or bottom left rather, some canoes being carved and painted, and then a group of Coast Salish people is actually paddling their canoe. So they're very well-known artists. People from around the world buy Coast Salish artwork. It's highly prized and can get quite expensive, but it is beautiful, so that's totally understandable. Downtown Victoria in the inner harbor on a busy summer evening. I think this was for Symphony Splash, where they get a barge and they have the Victoria Symphony play classical music for everyone in the harbor. It's a wonderful festival. And we'll talk about some of these stately buildings you can see in Victoria. So stately architecture here on the left-hand side, we have the Empress Hotel covered in ivy growing up the side. And then here on the right, we have the provincial parliament buildings. So the Empress Hotel just read my notes. The Empress Hotel and the Parliament buildings were designed by English architect and Victoria resident Francis Rattenbury, very well known in Victoria. So he designed both of these buildings. The Empress, the hotel, was designed in a kind of a neo-Gothic theme that was very popular in Canada at the time. All of the big railway hotels, including, like, for example, the Royal York Hotel in Toronto, the Fairmont Springs in Banff, they were all done in this kind of style. There is no railway to Vancouver Island, but there were steamships that connected with the railway on the mainland. And when people got off the ship, they saw this beautiful hotel as one of the first things they saw. And then, of course, the provincial parliament buildings, which I mentioned, you'll see it's covered in beautiful lights. They light it up at night. And then at Christmas time, some of those lights are red and green. But beautiful building done in a Romanesque style. And the provincial legislature, so the provincial government still meets there to this day. And you can still go there for tours of both buildings. Many people go to the Empress for high tea in the British tradition. My wife and my mother-in-law hosted our baby shower at the Empress Hotel. It was a big fancy to do. So we all had tea and scones and tarts and stuff. It was really good. So if you ever have a chance, high tea at the Empress, highly recommend it. Some other sights to see around downtown Victoria. Here on the left hand, we have Beacon Hill Park, which was constructed around the late 1800s, early 20th century, 1900s, done in the kind of a garden style that was popular at the time. So it has beautiful gardens, has a cricket pitch for playing cricket. I told you about the British traditions are important there, so they still play cricket there. Also a petting zoo for the kids to play with the goats and chickens and whatnot, so it's a lot of fun. I mentioned the Chinatown. That's what Chinatown looks like today. It's really cool. That structure there is called the Gate of Harmonious Interests. And in Chinatown, there's, of course, wonderful Chinese restaurants, Chinese groceries, traditional Chinese medicine. There's a Chinese Christian school as well. So it's a really neat place to visit. And then here at the bottom, we have Emily Carr House. For those of you who don't know, Emily Carr is a very famous Canadian artist. She was born and raised in Victoria, and her paintings were done often focusing on the local Indigenous peoples. So she painted a lot of scenes about Indigenous life, but also landscapes. British Columbia is well known for its beautiful landscapes, so much of her paintings focus on the landscape in British Columbia. Emily Carr was a bit of an eccentric. She had a pet monkey. So she was definitely a little bit different, but she had beautiful paintings. So I highly recommend visiting Emily Carr House here in Victoria.